Fall in, dress right dress, cover down, 4 and 40 all around. It's time for the Abington Veterans Muster. My name is Travis, Abington resident, Marine Corps veteran, and your host. Happy 2025. I hope you had a very merry and safe Christmas, a happy New Year celebration, and now we're in the frozen month of January. I hope you're nice and warm watching this program. Thank you so much for joining us. And we have a full episode for you today, and I'm going to start with the word. I'm going to pass the word just like we are in formation. Christmas was a very exciting time in the town of Abington. A lot of stuff went on. Very happy to see what was going on. I was involved to some extent, but everybody made Christmas brighter in Abington this year. I want to give a big shout out to the Daughters of the American Revolution chapter here in the Abington area for the tree they put in the Abington Town Hall. So they put a Christmas tree with ornaments, with needs on it, and you could either use their Amazon wish list or buy stuff off the tree and bring it down to the town hall. And they got those presents to veterans in need in Abington. Jill Higgins and the rest of the Daughters of the American Revolution who put that together, thank you so much. I salute you. You make Christmas brighter for a person's life. And there's more. We have Mal's Kitchen. Melissa with Mal's Kitchen got together with Adam and they cooked up this thing. Well, Mal did the cooking, not Adam. Although Adam last month won the Abington Chili Cook-Off. How about that? Well, that's a different story for a different time, folks, but I gotta focus. But Mal is cooking up and cooked up Christmas dinners for veterans in Abington. And she did this, there's like 50 meals going out, and she did it all in her kitchen and handed it to veterans, and veterans had Christmas dinner courtesy of Mal's Kitchen. We thank her for her work and her team and her crew for getting it all together. We appreciate what you all have done. And to support Mal, we have the Bubble Barge who went and delivered meals to veterans who couldn't make it to Mal's Kitchen. And again, this is just really the greatest thing about living in Abington, seeing these people come together to support veterans during this time of year, and veterans who may not be able to get out and go places to get stuff like, meals and prescriptions and things like that. So thank you for all your help there. We got an action-packed year coming up. Lots of stuff going on. We want to remind you all that the Chapter 115 benefits is a benefit for you as a veteran if you qualify financially that you can take advantage of. You can come down and see Lisa McGovern or Adam Gunn in the Abington Town Hall. Get signed up for Chapter 115. Understand your benefits that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts provides for you and partake of those benefits that you need. What else do we have? We have, I got an update. We had Fred Villa on from Martin's Breakfast in Abington, and Adam just got me the numbers. Newsflash. Since April 2022, Martin's in Abington has served 2,508 breakfasts for veterans since that time. That is an unbelievable number. And I said it before, I said it to Fred when he was on the Abington Veterans Muster, people spend a lot of money and time and effort figuring out how to try to get hold of veterans and get them to come together so they can talk to them about their needs, benefits, and the future, right? I think the secret really is free breakfast. Bacon, eggs, omelets, pancakes. I like buckwheat pancakes myself. And I like Martin's breakfast quesadilla. Yay, yummy. It's breakfast, folks. It's simple as breakfast to bring veterans together. You can't go wrong. You cannot go wrong with breakfast. So again, I hope you had a very safe and Merry Christmas. I hope your New Year was also safe and you had a happy one. We're in the cold, month of the year with January here in New England and in Abington. But I hope you're warm right now. And again, thank you to everybody throughout the year who volunteered, gave their time, donated, whether it was clothing, money, food, other things to help veterans out in Abington. We couldn't do this without you. and on behalf of the Veterans Advisory Council, Lisa McGovern, and the Director of Abington Veterans Services, Adam Gunn, Happy New Year. Thank you. We're back, and thank you for staying with us. Abington is a special place, and if you know where to look in Abington, there's all kinds of treasures and cool places and neat things tucked away that you have to look for. And sometimes you have to have somebody who really knows the town, an Abingtonian, a true Abingtonian, or townie as they like to be called. And my next guest is someone I would call, and I've been told and I understand to be truly one of those people who represent the fabric of Abington. So, it is without any further ado or delay that I introduce Eileen Walls as my next guest to the Abington Veterans Muster. How are you doing?
Fine, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here on the first show of the Abington Veterans Muster in 2025.
I know, crazy.
I can't believe it. Like a year ago, Kevin, Adam, and I were just like trying to bring this to life, and here we are.
Oh, great.
So,
wow. I'm just surprised it's 2025.
It is surprising.
It seems like yesterday we were worried about what was going to happen in 2000, like was everything going to shut down?
Right.
And now we're 25 years in.
And Y2K,
Yep.
just don't even remember that anymore.
I know.
But it did happen. It did
Yep.
happen. You've been in Abington for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
You have touched many, many lives in Abington. But people may know who you are by association or by the fact you've taught one of their children.
Mm-hmm.
But tell people out there watching the Abington Veterans Muster who Eileen Walls is.
Well, I'm a retired teacher, taught for 35 years here in Abington. I still am connected to the schools in that I work the football games, sell tickets, and I do the girls' basketball clock. And I like just doing things that are still associated with the schools. I also manage the school's website, which is a nice little part-time thing to do. But it keeps me involved, I know what's going on in the schools. I still know some of the teachers. I retired 14 years ago, but there are still a few teachers, and of course Felicia Michelle. Actually, Felicia was my principal when I worked at the Frollo, so I've known her for a long time. And I just have been around. I actually am in awe of other people in Abington, the Sean Rileys, the Abington Celebrates Committee. These people do stuff constantly, all the time, year in and year out. And you're right, though, that's what makes Abington a nice place to live, the people that get things done.
A question just popped into my head. You taught for 35 years, right? Has it happened that you've taught any of your students' children?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And I always said, oh, I'm going to leave when I have my classmates' children. And that came really early on. And I was like, okay, now I'm going to leave when I have the children of my former students. And that happened, and I don't think I ever got to grandparents or grandchildren of my students. But yeah, I had actually a lot.
And teaching has changed a lot in 35 years.
Right. And from when I left in 2010 to now, I always say that when I run into a teacher who's still teaching, I never say, well, when I was teaching, I used to do it this way, because it's a totally different world. Right. The technology is different. We were just starting with technology. Not every kid had a phone, so that wasn't a big piece of it. And yeah, it was just different. It was pre-COVID, so that hadn't entered into things. And I never made it up to this school, so this is much bigger. I spent the last 20 years teaching at the Frollo when it was 7th and 8th grade. So it was much smaller, like a real family type school. You knew every kid, you knew their parents. And in some ways, I think that's nicer than the bigger, but the bigger also has more opportunities for the technology, and more. You can have more different subjects when you have a bigger school, because you have a staff that can cover those kinds of things.
It always amazed me, Eileen, how the entire town of Abington could fit into the auditorium at the Frollo. I don't know how we did it,
I know.
But we got really close with other parents
Yeah.
when there was a school event going on there. I'm like, how did we do that?
I know.
But you're right, the Frollo kind of is that classic school
Right.
type feel. whereas the new school, which is nice,
Right.
is more, it almost seems like a corporate campus.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's gorgeous, and it again,
For sure.
the technology is there. I never used a whiteboard, so
Oh, really?
I'm that far. I still had blackboards in my room. We were just starting to get into using videos and things like that. But yeah, it's a different world today. So
you like being out in the community, you like going to the football games, and
Yep.
the community comes out to support the Green Wave.
oh yeah.
So that's always a good time. How did you get connected with, we're going to talk about the Dyer Library and the gravestones, but how did you get connected with all that?
Well, with the Dyer, the 300th birthday they were gearing up for the 300th birthday of
Right.
Abington around 2010, 2011, and somebody, I can't remember who, asked if I would be involved in the putting together the commemorative book, kind of like a historical
That
look
book?
at.
Yeah, I've seen it like at Bemis when I
Right.
was there. Yeah.
And so then I asked, again, you always go to the same people. Rosie Walls, who was head of the child study group, she was head of the Friends of the Library. And so I asked her if she would work on it with me. And so by way of the book, we had to go to the Dyer a lot for mainly pictures. And I had been to the Dyer, and there was one time during my teaching when local history was part of the 7th grade curriculum. It's now part of 3rd grade curriculum. But in those days when I was there, I took my kids up to the Dyer for, it was more of a museum than a research library at that time. So I took my 5 classes up there, and I got to know a woman named Mrs. Coughlin, who basically ran the place. So through the book, having gone up to the Dyer to research things, I was right after 2012, so it was January 2013, I was up there returning some things, and the woman who was the director at the time, Joyce Hummerwan, just said, do you want to work here? And I was like, yeah, I think I do. So I've been there since 2013. I'm on my 3rd executive director. There's a new guy up there, he's Stephen O'Neill. He's been there since July. And actually the Dyer is, I think it's getting more well known. We had a big thing on Saturday with Abington Celebrates, and a lot of people came in.
What's the thing? I've been there before, and I realized, going to the bank, going to Mary Lou's when it was there, and other places, I drove by it like hundreds
I
of
know.
times. Dare I say thousands.
Yeah.
And never really realized what it was. It was a beautiful brick building, but I never really associated of it being anything.
Right.
Much less that it was available to go into
Right.
and look at.
Right.
And I remember going in there being like, I'm in a time capsule.
I know. It is a gorgeous place. It has wonderful resources, depending on what you're interested in researching, and a lot about genealogy, which is hot stuff right now with finding your roots and things like that. But sadly, you're right, a lot of native Abingtonians, never mind new Abingtonians, don't know that we exist. And when they find out and they come in, they're always, oh my gosh, I never knew this was here, and I'm going to come back. And so with our participating in Abington Celebrates, we've gotten more people in. Mike Carini did an estate sale as part of Abington Celebrates at the Dyer, and his goal was to get people in, and there were probably 100 people that came through that day. So we're hoping little by little, and the new director, I think, wants to do more of an outreach to the community, have open houses and programs and things like that. We work in conjunction with the Historical Society of Old Abington, and they have 6 programs a year, but the new director wants to do some that are sponsored by the Dyer.
Well, it was really interesting when I was there how Abington ties into, at the time that I went there, the project was a Civil War project. And I learned that Abington was the first to answer the call for Civil War troops from the Commonwealth.
Right.
And I'm reading the captain's, report, and he noted that, hey, we beat Braintree and the other towns there. We were first, but it was the truth. And I'm like, there must be a treasure trove of stories like that in there.
And we have, if you remember Ken Burns' Civil War thing, one of the keys, I think, in that program were the letters from men.
Yes.
And we have letters from Abington. Of course, it was Abington, Rockland, Whitman at the time, But we have letters handwritten back home to their parents, and very poignant, very, very sweet sometimes, very sad sometimes. But we have that right here in our town. And if you're a Civil War researcher, the Dyer is a must-see, because we not only have the history of old Abington sailors, soldiers, and Marines in the Civil War, but we have Michigan's units, Baltimore's. We have a wonderful Civil War library.
And I wanted to ask you, it doesn't seem like other towns have this kind of resource available to them.
No, I think a lot of them do. It's usually not a separate, like, the Dyer is a little bit different because it was started by with family money, the Dyer family money, and it's still run mainly on the Dyer family money. But the historical societies in other towns do this kind of thing. And the bigger the town and the wealthier the town, the bigger it is. Like Hingham has quite a nice historical society, and you can go visit them. And our director also works in Norwell, Hannah at the Stetson building. So most do, and places like Quincy, of course, they're huge because they're the presidents, and you can visit churches and Adams homes and things like that. But for little old Abington, I think we have a nice resource.
It seems to me that history came alive, and one of the things that we're discovering with World War I and other types of conflicts is there's not a lot of written about the people who actually served. That's not the case here. Like, you're helping keeping these people who served the Union at the time or in the Revolutionary War alive. You served as a teacher for 35 years, and then you go to this. What was it like kind of switching gears from being a teacher to maybe let's just call it a quasi-historian?
Right. In some ways it was the same, because I taught social studies. I had to do research to prepare for my lessons.
Okay.
And that was always one of my favorite parts of teaching. The least favorite part was correcting papers. So the research part is always something that I liked. And I still talk about those. I'm trying to put together a tour of the Mount Vernon Cemetery, because it's a beautiful, beautiful cemetery. And it came about right after Mount Auburn was built, and that's the first, what you would call a cemetery in the United States. And we're very similar to them. There was a way of thinking about cemeteries at the time that is changing right now. They were outside the city, they were peaceful, people picnicked, which we would find kind of odd, but that was a big thing when and that was in the mid-1851, I think Auburn started. We started in 1853. And so doing the research on the people who are buried there is just really interesting. And you learn when they got married, how many kids they had, what they did for a job. Almost all of them were in the shoe business in some way. And there's a wonderful book, and all three towns have one. It's the GAR book, Grand Army of the Republic, and everyone who joined the GAR was interviewed, and they wrote on, every person had an individual page, and they just talked, and the person wrote down what they said. Wow. Anything from the most important thing I did in the war to my friends I made during the war, things like that. So, and that book, thanks to the trustees of the Dyer Library, is now online. So when I'm doing the research for a Civil War soldier and I can't find much on Ancestry because they were just an average everyday person, I can bring that book up now online, and if they joined the GAR, I've got their story. How they died, when they died, what they did for a job, and just what their life was like. So that's really helpful, and that will help Civil War historians really across the nation.
What a fantastic resource. If you get a chance to go to the Dyer Library, I can't recommend it enough. And it's just a really exciting place. So you're doing the Dyer Library, but then you get involved in another project in Abington. And this is about going and researching and sprucing up and fixing gravestones. How did that happen?
Adam Gunn simply asked me to do it, and I can't. How
what's
did I get in with Adam?
Right. How do you go from doing Dyer to doing gravestones?
Right. Because unfortunately or fortunately, I'm one of those people that I can't say no. And Adam's so nice and wonderful. You can't say no to him.
He's charming too. Isn't
Yes. And so he just said one day, "Would you be willing to?" And I was like, "Okay." And I had no idea that there are hundreds of veterans' graves at
Really?
Mount Vernon, hundreds. And so I thought, I may not live to see the end of this job, but I'm going to try to get. Pete Walters has helped.
Pete and Janice,
We do need more people to do the washing. We can't do it during the winter. It's too cold because it involves water and all that. But it was very satisfying. I started with the Civil War mound, the GAR mound, and I started there because the Daughters of the American Revolution, even though they're Revolution and not Civil War, they were putting a boulder with a plaque dedicated to all the Revolutionary War soldiers buried at Mount Vernon, and they were putting it on that mound. So I thought, well, I might as well start here and get these cleaned up. And I like to clean, and it's very satisfying, even when people know when you're at home and you've cleaned an area and you kind of stand back and look. And the graves were the same way. These are those white stone graves. So they, in particular, really clean up well. So when I got there, I think there were 17 of them around the mound. And they were, had lichen on them. They were black in some cases. And with this special stuff called D2 that Adam got, they're now white again. And so it looked nice for that dedication. And then I just started researching each gravestone. Took a picture before, took a picture after, did the research, and Adam's posting that information on the town's veterans website now too.
What's it like, though, to go into Mount Vernon Cemetery, which is very beautiful? Did several ceremonies there, and the American Legion, the Coburns do a fantastic job. And you start discovering what this stone means and what it is. What's that like for you?
It's poignant, I guess, because this was a person. I just heard someone say this not too long ago, that as long as someone still says your name, you're not really gone.
Yes.
And these guys have been passed away, I don't know, the math, 150 years ago. And we're still remembering. I mean, that's just nice to do. And some of them had wonderful lives after they got back from the war, and some of them did not. So it's just a human story.
Were the majority of them Civil War or Revolutionary?
So far, I've just done Civil War.
Okay.
I did my father, because he's a veteran, and he was in during the Korean War. The graves that are in the veterans lot, you don't have to do, because they're not stones. They're the plaques in the ground, and they don't really get dirty. And now Josh Cullivan has been
Cullivan's Landscaping.
has been doing a great job getting that ready for both Veterans Day and Memorial Day. But all the rest, there's lichen on. And some of them you can't read because they're so dirty. Oh, and I also did Ralph Hamlin because he was just kind of on my way from one area to another. And Ralph died was killed in Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so, and people, we have streets that are named after a lot of these veterans. Probably, I don't know about Civil War or Revolutionary, but at least World War I, II. And Ralph Hamlin Drive is the road leading down to Beaver Brook.
Oh, okay.
It was named after him.
I wondered about that. Okay, yeah.
Yep. So,
what kind of help do you need to clean the rest of them? I mean, you say hundreds. Do you have like 500 you got to go through, or?
The help that I need is people who are willing to come out in the spring and summer and fall and do some of the washing.
Okay.
And maybe
What's
even they would like,
that?
so this stuff called D2, and they use it at all the military cemeteries.
Okay.
And it doesn't harm the stone.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep. And you wet the stone down. I learned this from Pam Ryan, who does a lot of work with the GAR in Rockland. So you wet the stone down with water, then you spray it with the D2, and you kind of let it sit for a while, and then you have a plastic, you can't use anything with metal, a plastic scrub brush, and you scrub, and then you rinse it all with water, and all the dirt washes away, and it's very satisfying to see a beautiful stone again.
Beautiful stone with a name, and that name means something
Yep,
to you.
yep. And it's great when I can find a full story on the person. Like I say, ancestry's been really good, but some people just are under the radar and there's not much information about them. And others, and Pete Walters and I were just going through, there are things at the Dyer that haven't been organized, and we're trying to do a million things up there at the same time. But there's a box, and it said Civil War papers, and we were like, well, let's just see what this is. And there are probably 20 files with the story of Civil War soldiers in there, and so we're taking them out, and they're all handwritten in cursive, which is a problem for us because nobody reads cursive anymore. So we like to transcribe that so you can read what it says, and so we need people who can read cursive that are willing to volunteer and transcribe. Yeah, they do have programs that you can scan the paper and then send it through, but it still needs, it's not 100% accurate, but it's still better because it's not only is it cursive writing, it's old cursive writing, and sometimes is that an S or an F or a T, or it's
a lost art.
Yeah, it is a lost art. I know people complain about it, but there's no need to teach cursive anymore in the schools because of computers.
True, but when you see beautifully done cursive writing and realize it's done by hand, it's like, I think we lost something.
I know. I think that some schools, when they have, like in the elementary grades, when they have like a special 20-minute lesson, they might just do it for fun. And the kids always did seem to like it. We used to have, when I taught elementary school, they had handwriting people come to the school. It was like a company, and you had to get papers ready, and you'd say to the kids, this is for Mr. So-and-so, he's coming in to look at our writing, so do your best on this. And you always wanted a gold seal. Sometimes you got a blue seal, which was a little less. But we used to have to gear up for their visit, and that's when we'd really get into the cursive. And kids did like, it was, it's moving and tactile and stuff like that. But
sure. But I think the thing that I really kind of got out of our conversation is what you said, is as long as these names are being said, reviewed, looked at, and then the stories found, they'll never be forgotten.
Right.
And I think that's the thing that really kind of brought this whole thing to the fore, is going to the Dyer and realizing somebody hand wrote this.
A person
yes,
who had a mother and a father and maybe a wife and children, someone loved them. And they went to work every day, and they came home and hugged their kids just like we do today. And they fought for their country. In a really tough, not that they were all not tough wars.
Right, no, that was a tough
It
one.
was still the old way of lining up, and I'd hate to have been in that first row because.
And they did it. They did it. And so understanding how that works, and understanding that if you're in Abington or watching this program and want to contribute, you can. And how would someone say watching this, you know what, I want to get a group together and come out to Mount Vernon and clean graves? How would we do that?
I suppose get in touch with me, which you can do through the Dyer. Okay. Or actually, my email is on the school's website under, I'm on the Hall of Fame Sports Committee, athletic thing. And my home email is on the Hall of Fame, Athletic Hall of Fame page on the Abington Public Schools website, so they could get in touch with me that way too, or Adam, I'm sure.
So I'll have the email to Eileen in the write-up for this show, and thank you very much. Or you can get a hold of Adam.
Oh, get hold of Adam, that's right, yep.
All right.
So.
Well, I have learned so much about the spirit of Abington. I think that's what I get from talking with you, is that the spirit of Abington is strong, and we're proud of those who have served. We want to make sure they're remembered, and thank you so much for your efforts.
I would just like to say, if you haven't been to the Dyer, come to the Dyer. If you've been there before, come back. And if you're new to town, and so, townies know about it for the most part, but if you're new to town, this is now your town, and if you want to be invested in the town, you can learn a little bit about the history, and we always need volunteers. We've got some great volunteers now, but always can use more. But come visit the Dyer. It's a wonderful place, wonderful place.
It absolutely is. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I felt alive in a different way, and thank you for keeping those memories alive.
Okay.
Well, this is Travis with the Abington Veterans Muster. I'm joined by my guest, Eileen Walls. Eileen, thank you so much for coming in and educating us, and again, showing us that you as a civilian, maybe you didn't serve, maybe you never served, but you can serve your community in this way and help keep these veterans' names alive. Eileen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, this is January 2025. Thank you again for coming out and watching and supporting us. And as we say when we close down the Abington Veterans Muster, you are dismissed!